Well, first and foremost, thanks for joining us tonight. We appreciate you all being SABR members and being here and taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for our second SABR Scholar Sessions. I would like to introduce our two stars of the evening. First, our host, Tyrone Brooks, who's the Senior Director of Front Office and Field Staff Diversity Pipeline Program at Major League Baseball. And Tyrone's guest tonight is Travis Apple, who is the Chief Revenue Officer at Logitix. Travis is a veteran of MLB, NBA, WNBA, and NHL front offices and wrote the book Hustle Your Way to Success in Sports Sales, and hosts the successful podcast 52 Weeks of Hustle. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tyrone and Travis and let them get going. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it, Scott. Thank you so much. Travis, glad to have you on here. For me, this is just great to reconnect with you, actually. If some of you have looked closely at our LinkedIn profiles, you'll see that Travis and I both overlapped with the Pittsburgh Pirates back. I joined back in 2010. Travis joined in 2009, and we ended up being together for several seasons. So glad to get a chance to connect with you. I know it is. And, the game of baseball is something that is, and also just sports in general, is so unique as far as just the people that we all get a chance to connect with throughout the industry. And you've personally have navigated a lot in different parts of the sports industry. So just really excited that we'll have a chance to touch base on your career, touch base on networking, how to connect with people. And obviously your success with your book and also your podcast is just a great demonstration of all the work that you've been able to do in your career. So Glenn, again, everybody, please welcome Travis Apple here. Excited to have you here, Travis.
No, thank you. Thanks, Tyrone. Always a pleasure to reconnect. And for everybody on the call, one, certainly appreciate your time for allowing me to speak. I am not one that I'm going to sit up here and just tell you everything and here's what it is. Like, let's be interactive. Let's make the most of these 25, 30 minutes. Any question, there's no dumb question. There's just dumb people, and there's no dumb people on here. But, I want to just quickly start off by saying, kudos, congrats, and thank you for all of you being here. It's 8 o'clock Eastern time, 7 o'clock Central. I don't even know all the time zones, or is it 6 o'clock Pacific time, 7 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, whatever it may be. But most importantly, there are a lot of you that your friends are, on the couch, having a couple drinks, enjoying TV or whatever it may be, and you guys are investing in your career for being here. And so that's a huge kudos to you. I'll quickly start. There's always three things I really look for in successful people. The first one is having a passion. Do you have a passion for the business? Do you have a passion for your craft? Do you have a passion to want to win and want to be successful? The second piece is work ethic, right? Raise your hands. How many of you are hard workers? All right. So I opened and started my own recruiting company. In my entire career, I've recruited, interviewed, and hired a lot of people in a variety of roles. And everybody and their brother says I'm the hardest worker. In the sports space, can you prove it? And this is a part of that is you guys are proving it already of just being here in this evening, trying to learn and trying to better your craft. Work ethic is everybody can say that. Are you willing to go above and beyond the Call of Duty? And not the video game, the Call of Duty, the true Call of Duty and everything you're supposed to do. And then the third piece is coachability, right? We're an evolving, ever-changing marketplace. Hell, 5 years ago, to say, hey, let's set up a Zoom call at 8 o'clock at night and we'll have 70, 80 people would be like, what do you mean? How would they do that? What is that? And now this is the future and the new part of our world. And so everything you have to do is evolve. So if you think about those three things, it's passion, work ethic, coachability. What do those three things have in common? Anybody know?
Consistency.
Consistency. What else?
Effort.
Effort.
Intrinsic.
Intrinsic. What else?
They're all things we can control.
All things you can control, right? And look, all of you probably have a passion for sport, and maybe it's a passion for baseball. At the end of the day, I hate to break it to any of you, you're not going to be the starting pitcher. You're not the starting shortstop. You're not the cleanup hitter, right? You're going to be in the sports business side where you're controlling it. And Tyrone and I were joking early on in our time in the Pirates. We literally, my 3 years, my 3 seasons there, we lost 105, 97, and 93 games. Even in my career as a sports executive, I have a 330 winning percentage. I've made the playoffs one time and got swept in the first round. Like, I don't have any rings to show for it, right? But I still have a passion for this business, and because you got to control what you can control every single day. I'm a big believer good things happen to good people if you can put yourself in a good position. So have a passion every day, have a hell of a work ethic, and be open to learning, and good things will happen. So, and again, thank you all for being here.
That's great. I mean, Travis, let me ask you a question. First, for those that may not know fully what Logitix is, can you kind of talk a little bit about your company there, working for them as a chief revenue officer, and kind of what that really sort of means for everybody who may not have a basis of understanding that?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And I'll even kind of back history of, my career. I've worked for a variety of teams and leagues, and started my own company in recruiting and consulting. And actually, I was a client of Logitix, both on the team side. And then when I was doing my own recruiting and training and consulting, I partnered with Logitix. And so you talk about the value of building relationships. I know we're going to talk a little bit about networking, and me networking with the ownership group and the executive level team, which kind of brought me to here. And what Logitix is we are a dynamic pricing tool to partner with rights holders in live entertainment, whether that be sports teams, concerts, promoters, festivals, etc., to dynamically price and distribute inventory. So as a chief revenue officer, I oversee all of our sales, biz dev, partnerships, marketing, PR, as well as our pricing organization. So we're, as a company, about 90 total people. There's about 70 that report up through me in the revenue vertical, with the rest being on tech, and really showcasing, valued partnerships. But I fast forward, the reason I think I have this role and can be successful at this role is because I've sat on the other side of the chair, right? So now I can go into a client and say, I know your frustrations, I know your stress points, I know your struggles, because I've sat in your chair, and now I'm on the other side providing that ultimate solution.
That's pretty. I know your background is so extensive and working in so many different leagues and also various teams. Could you talk a little bit about sort of the differences that you kind of felt from being at an individual team versus being like with the NBA, like you have in the past? So, as far as with the NBA's actual headquarters, kind of that difference.
Yeah, I love being asked this question. I get asked this a lot, and I think one of the things that I think is always very, very important is it goes back to that passion. And I'll say for me, so I grew up in Ohio. I grew up in a small farm town, and my favorite sports team growing up was the Baltimore Orioles. And I don't just say this because I'm on a baseball call. Like, I love the Orioles. I love Cal Ripken Jr. Thank God I never worked for the Orioles. And I say that is because, and Tyrone, you've lived it, right? When we worked in Pittsburgh and I would hire people, and we were in the midst of losing 18, 19, and 20 straight losing seasons. And for those of you who have ever been to Pittsburgh, from Pittsburgh, have family or friends live in Pittsburgh, it's a diehard sports city. But when your sports team sucks, they crush you. And it's hard. And we had some challenges of people that lived there locally to ever get excited about selling Pirates baseball, because every weekend and every night they'd hear from their friends and family, the team sucks, they're awful, they're awful. So I say that when you think about passion and passion for what you do, you want to have a passion for the business in your craft. And I'm a firm believer, like, I don't think I'll ever work for any of my favorite sports teams, because I don't know if I could take off my fan hat, right? Where if I work for the Pittsburgh Pirates, I didn't grow up a Pirates fan. I worked for the Miami Marlins. I grew up, I worked for the Phoenix Suns or the Atlanta Hawks. Like, I didn't care necessarily about the team. I cared about the business and my craft. And so I would also challenge all of you on this call, don't just take a job because it's your favorite team or your favorite sport. Take the job with the right people and the right opportunity. That's the most important thing. And so even as I think about my career, I've been very fortunate to have a lot of jobs that I've turned down. I've turned down more jobs than I've had. But I've also, we'll talk about networking, but I also am taking the roles for the right reasons. I've interviewed people that are like, why do you want this job? I'm the biggest Pittsburgh Pirates fan, or I'm the biggest, Orlando Magic fan. And I'm like, then you should buy season tickets, because that's what you're passionate about. I need you to be passionate about your brand, your craft, and really driving the organization the right way. And so that leads into a little bit of your question, Tyrone, like, working for a team, you've got kind of that one common goal. Whatever department or organization you're a part of, you've got that goal in mind. You've got your personal and professional goals. working for a league office, as you know, is a little bit different because now, on the NBA and you're controlling 32 teams and the destiny. And when I was at the NBA league office, I oversaw all of ticketing and premium seating. There's 66 total teams between the NBA, WNBA, and G League. And so you now have all those teams with all that personnel trying to fight for that one goal. But at the end of the day, and I've also asked the question, and I've always been in the sales and revenue vertical. What was different between selling baseball to hockey or hockey to basketball or hockey to baseball? At the end of the day, you're asking the same questions. Yes, you've got 81 games versus 44. You've got roughly 40,000 seats in baseball in the summertime versus 18,000 seats in the wintertime for arena sports. But at the end of the day, you've got a value proposition and the customer has a value proposition. Your job is to marry them together. And so I think those are the big, kind of differences. And then you're going to be in Pittsburgh. It's definitely a locally owned, a lot of colleges there, a lot of, people are born, raised there, and they'll die there. You live in a market like Orlando or Atlanta or Phoenix. I live in Nashville, Tennessee now. It's a very transient market. Not a ton of people live there. So they may grow up, again, a huge fan of someone else. How do you drive them to understand the value of experience at the individual games?
Yeah, I mean, you've hit on some really good points there. And I know one thing I look from my own experience working in the baseball operations side, both at the team side and also at the league level. The one difference for some of you that may be out there trying to figure out what's next for yourself, especially on the team side, it was almost like 24/7. I felt like I was always on alert for things and helping to put out fires, different things.
Yep.
Especially on the baseball operation side when there's transactions happening every night with them up to the minor leagues to the big leagues and
Yep.
and
All
also
ups, all
yeah
downs.
all that happening. So and then at the league level with the commissioner's office, it was just kind of weird. Even when I first joined in 2016 with the commissioner's office, it felt like, wow, I actually have my weekends a little bit to myself. So it was a little bit different understanding that. So there is a little bit of a more of a 9 to 5. I noticed just from my own experience with MLB once I went into the league office, and then obviously we still get very busy throughout certain weekends. Things that are happening. If you have events that are taking place as we get ready for obviously a lot of our jewel events throughout the year.
Yep.
Yeah, Travis. Also, I got to say one thing too, that with us being there together in Pittsburgh, I think definitely one thing that did help, probably from a little bit of a sales perspective there, when Clint Hurdle took over as the manager of the Pirates, and having that change happen. I mean, he was one who truly connected with the city of Pittsburgh. He
Yep.
picked up and that literally moved his family from Colorado to
Right.
Pittsburgh and really made it a point to be active in the community there. And I got to give him a lot of credit for just that kind of bringing back some things there for those
Yep.
that were kind of
Absolutely.
hating on the Pirates for a number of years, and now really hoping things were going to change. He eventually helped in that process to really galvanize the organization in some way.
Yep. I completely agree.
Let me ask you a question, just kind of switching a little bit, thinking about when it comes to like mentorship,
Yep.
when you look at your career, how important has that been a part of you and your own development, and also just seeing you progress throughout from your different places you've had to go in your journey?
Tremendous, right? Like as I think about, mentorship, a lot of people will read or hear, oh, find a mentor. I don't think one mentor is enough, or should be like, hey, I got a mentor, it's good. Because it's all about the effort you put into it, right? What you put into it's what you're going to get out of it. And, I look at mentorship as it's got to be a two-way street. I think one of the things as I was getting into this business, I always struggled with like, how the hell am I supposed to help somebody? They're in a vice president chair, a C-level chair, and it's a two-way street. What are they ever going to do for me? But it's surprising because it's easy to actually figure out what you can do for people. And like, so I think as you think about the value of mentorship, it's got to go both ways. It's find somebody that you respect, trust, and care about, and vice versa, that they're going to trust, respect, and care about you. Now, a lot of the effort is going to be on your end, right? I look at it and I will an open, feel free to add me on LinkedIn, reach out to me. I'm more than happy to talk to whoever, whenever. Like I will always make time because people made time for me. But I'm also, to that point, I'm not going to go and ask, Tyrone or Scott and say, hey, send me a list of everybody and I'll reach out to them. directly, right? Like, but I'm here to help. And so being able to do that, but finding mentors that again, care about you personally and professionally, and then have some value when you go into that, right? As I think about, a mentorship, like it needs to be a constant touch point. There is still to this day, there will be a lot of people like, and I do a lot of calls like this where right afterwards, they'll hit me up. We'll have a conversation. I won't hear from them for 10 months, a year, 2 years. Then all of a sudden be like, hey, I spoke with you, February 20th of 2024. And now it's, February 20th of 2026. And like, I saw there was a posting at your company. Could I get an interview? And it's like, that's not mentorship, right? Like, let's be more intelligent. But you think about mentorship, like, what is that consistent cadence, of interacting with them? Like, let's call it once every 90 days. Doesn't have to be like, hey, just checking in. Maybe you find an article about where they're working. Maybe you find an article about something you guys talked about, about the future of AI in sports, the future of analytics in sports, etc. Sending, hey, I was just thinking about you. Hope you and your family are doing well. Things like that. But mentorship is very vital in your career. And I would challenge all of you to find several of them, but this is always the hardest thing is like, don't force it, right? If somebody is not willing to like give a little bit, or you're trying to like stretch so much to like, I just want to find anybody and everybody to like talk to, like dedicate yourself to find a couple of those mentors to really immerse yourself with their business, their career, making sure you're going and asking thought-provoking questions. The number one thing I tell you is when you go into a mentor call, as a prime example, do not go into a mentor call unprepared. Where I would challenge you is like, would you ever go to an interview unprepared? If the answer is yes, you better check yourself at the door, because you'll get crushed and the competition will crush you. Going into a mentor call, be prepped, right? Do some research. It's so easy to find these people on LinkedIn, find out about their career. Have questions written out, typed up that you're going to ask them. Understand, like, if you're reaching out to me, look up Logitix website, like, right? Research a little bit about the company, research about maybe a testimonial, what people say, and ask about those. Like, just have a plan of attack when it comes into mentorship.
You hit on some really, really good points there. I truly, I think back to just the people that I've had a chance to be involved with, and like you said, staying connected with folks throughout, and not something where it's a 2-year gap goes by and all of a sudden then you're asking. Well, let's kind of shift a little bit related to networking, because a lot of this is very much part of that. And when it comes to how to go about the process of networking, and especially with parts of this conference, which are going to be coming with the SABR Analytics Conference, are going to be both virtual and also in-person elements of it.
Yep.
Any thoughts and advice, Travis, you have for our group here, who maybe once they get into that setting, and let's first talk about maybe being in person at the
Yep.
SABR Analytics Conference. And how can you kind of go about that process of making yourself available, talking to somebody you may not know?
Yeah, in person. I mean, on that one is get out of your comfort zone. You got to be willing to get out of your comfort zone, willing to push the envelope, right? Willing to differentiate yourself. Even if you think about it now, right? 60 people at the SABR conference, 60 people, you guys are all a community. But at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, you're probably going to compete with each other in a future job, future role, future promotion, future opportunity. So what are you doing that's going to differentiate yourself from everyone else in this Zoom call right now? When it comes in person, like, set yourself up the goal. How many people are you going to talk to? Don't be the person when the in-person meetings happen, when you're in that side tabletop and there's 5 of you and you all know each other. Challenge yourself to go to a table you don't know anyone. Network with them, and you never know who could be your next boss. I'll give you a prime example. I was at a career fair. I was young. I was 24 years old. Right. It was my first management job. I just got to Pittsburgh. I was 23 actually at the time. Got to Pittsburgh. I was going to Cleveland, Ohio. There's a sports sales workshop. That morning, about 7 a.m., I was riding down the elevator. Okay. I got my suit and tie on. And mind you, I'm going in to interview people all day, to hire, to work for me. I get on the elevator. A couple people get on a floor below me. I said, good morning. It was, sup. And I was like, how's it going? They're like, nothing, right? Guess who interviewed somebody that first morning at 7:30? Guess who came to my table? Sup, right? He came to my table, said, sup. The kid about lost it, right? And I said, I'm not going to interview you. You know exactly how this interview is going to go. I'm going to give you some advice. You just never know who your next boss could be, and you never know who could be watching, right? This kid could have been a rock star, and they may be a rock star. I don't know their name. They may be a rock star in our industry. One day he may reach out to me and be like, thank you, I hope, is what he says. But you just never know. So when you're in these networking situations, there's eyes that are always going to be on you. Like my grandpa growing up always told me, like, you never know who's watching. Like, I may not be here at home, but I know when you get home. I know what you're doing. So as you think about that, like, always be on the lookout. And like, are you challenging yourself when you look in yourself in the mirror at the end of that conference? Did you give it your all? Did you push the envelope? Then from there, what's your follow-up? Right? It's so easy nowadays to like find people's address and like, I go back to the old school snail mail. How many handwritten notes do you get? Right? Not very many. Maybe a birthday card here or there. Like, send a handwritten note. Like, follow up with an email. Follow up with a LinkedIn invite. Like, do the little things that are going to differentiate yourself in every step of the way. And it transitions if you're going to be joining virtually. Yeah, it's not going to be as easy as like being able to like go and meet people. But right now, like, you can look at all the participants, screenshot it, take a look, write down the names and numbers, and then reach out to them. Hey, I appreciate you having that conversation. I appreciate the dialogue. I appreciate what you said there. Hey, I have a question. You mentioned XYZ. Tell me more about that. What does that mean to you? Those are the big things because, again, going back to everybody can network. Everybody can say hello to somebody or be at the same conference and be like, well, yeah, I met a couple people. Did you make an impact? Right? You think about like career fairs. I've worked a lot of career fairs in my days. People will come up and they give you a resume. You've got 30 seconds to really make an impact. Are you prepared to give a great elevator pitch of who you are and ask great questions? Or you come up and you're like, yeah, like, it must be cool to work for the Detroit Pistons. Like, I'm a huge basketball fan. That's my dream. See ya, right? It's gone that way. So I think networking is going to be very important, but I think more importantly than just the initial networking is what is your follow-up plan and process? Because that will be a big part of if you're going to be successful with everything you do.
That all makes a ton of sense. And one thing also, I think folks should make sure they're fully following. If you're ever on a some type of Zoom, especially where you have a chance to potentially interact or at least have your face shown, do everything you can to make sure you're visible. I think that really just helps a lot for folks. If you have, because one, you want to make sure you pay respect to those that are speaking also. So one
Yep.
thing just to always remember from that perspective.
I think a couple of things. And it's funny, I just got a couple updates on my phone from LinkedIn. So a couple of you added me. So I appreciate that. But, I think, look, I'll kind of push it out to everyone here. Like, one way to differentiate yourself is be known and ask the thought-provoking questions. Scott just mentioned in the chat, feel free to ask away. Any question, any and all questions. So,
Travis, let me ask you a little bit about your book and your podcast, kind of how all those kind of came together. I just would love to real quickly if you're able to touch on that.
Yeah. So, look, as you think about goals, right? One of my main goals, I've always been a big reader. I love reading. And look, I'm not going to push reading on anyone because I've also been in the chair when I was in, high school. It was like, I don't want to read anymore. But find that passion. I found a passion. I can't read fiction. Can't. I read nonfiction and business books and biographies. That's about the extent of it, right? But I've always been a reader, and I've always felt when I got into this business, I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. I didn't know what I was getting into. I've had to learn a lot. And so I've always thought, how can I provide a blueprint to help people have more success? I grew up, I went to a triple major in college, but nothing to do with this, what I'm doing in business development, revenue. And so it always been my goal to like help give back. And so I just, one day on a plane, I traveled out, I started writing and then, more journaling. And then I said, what if I can turn this in to a blueprint to be successful? And so I released now a couple of years ago, Hustle Your Way to Success in Sports Sales. And as I think about, that book, it's really a blueprint from how to build out your resume, to what questions you should ask in an interview, to how to prepare yourself for your first day, to then when you're in your first day. And, I think the really cool thing about the book is I've gotten a lot of feedback. There's a lot of schools that utilize it as their curriculum. There's a lot of entry level sports teams that utilize it. But probably the coolest thing about it is there's been a lot of people that have read it and said, you know what, either through this, I've realized, you know what, I never gave sales a chance. Maybe I'll try it. And then probably more times than none, people are like, I want to get in the sports business. This helped me get in the sports business, but also helped me realize maybe sales wasn't for me. So yeah, I call it hustle your way to success in sports sales, but I do think it's a true blueprint to just be successful in the sports business, no matter what role you are. And so that was probably the best thing. Like, look, I always kind of joke both with that and called 52 Weeks of Hustle as a weekly podcast on Wednesdays where I sit down with industry leaders to talk about their career and their advice. And, unfortunately, I don't have the Joe Rogan Spotify deal for my podcast. I have won some great awards with the book, but it's not paying enough to retire and become a full-time author or podcast host. So it's my way to give back. I love giving back, no different than calls like this. I love the idea that I look at and how do I continue to give back to people that either want to be in this business, that would love to excel in this business, or hopefully one day take my job one day in this business as well. And so a lot of really cool, interesting feats. Down the road, I could certainly bore you guys with the challenges of writing a book, publishing a book, marketing a book. I can tell you the challenges and struggles of doing a podcast, marketing, a podcast, editing a podcast, and then all the good things about it as well. But it's been a great journey. It's been a huge part of it. I'm almost to my 200th episode. I'm in almost at the end of season 4 already on the podcast. Have released the book of, fortunately, I've a lot of people, maybe some of you on this call, have purchased the book, which I greatly appreciate. And most importantly, it's hopefully it's a huge help for them in their career as well.
No, thank you so much for that insight, Travis. Somebody had a question related to, this is from Joseph Gould, related to what do you look for in the interview process, kind of when you're there talking to someone. If you could touch base a little bit about that from your experiences.
Yeah, and again, I'll do this on, I don't really care what job you're interviewing for. Like, I want somebody, this is one of the easiest things you can do. Dress to impress, right? I was on a flight this morning. I fly every week, and I was on a flight this morning, and I'm wearing my suit because I'm ready to go. And I was sitting next to somebody that was going in for a job interview at a business, and they had jeans and a polo on. And I thought to myself, and look, maybe I didn't have the fortitude to ask, maybe it wasn't for me, but I'm like, what if he walks in to interview with me and he's like jeans and a polo and I'm in a suit and tie? Like, you're automatically just so dressed down. Now, look, I get it. I don't want to necessarily get in the debate of like, what's business professional, what's professional, but dress the part. So then as you go into the interview, be prepared. Like, did you go in? I used to always hate when I would see people that would come in with like a notepad with like handwritten notes of like what questions they're going to ask. Because at the end of the day, my gut tells me they were probably sitting in the lobby or on the plane or on the drive that morning and realized like, oh shit, I should probably put some questions together. So come in prepared. And then from the actual interview, I just want to go back to those 3 things. I want to see somebody that shows that they have a passion for this, shows that like, I would explain being part of SABR and explaining what you're doing on a consistent basis and how you spend an hour one night listening to some crazy dude with a tie on that he's overdressed talk about his career. Like, those are the little things that go a long way to show you have a passion for this. Prove your work ethic, right? Go to show, like, if you're still in school, that you've had 2 or 3 internships, you've had multiple different opportunities. Go from a coachability of like, how have you overcome some challenges? One of the questions I always ask is, tell me about your biggest success. But the most important question I always ask is, tell me about a time you failed and how you overcame it. Like, I want to learn, have you failed in life? And how did you overcome it? Or did you just make excuses? And then ultimately, a big part of the interview process that people fail to do, there's two big things. So if you don't take anything away from this call, the next time you're in an interview, here are the 2 big things I would tell you. First, ask for the role. Do not be afraid to it, right? At the end of the interview, they will probably say, any other questions? Yes. Based on the conversation today, what would hold you back from offering me this role? Or hell, get crazy. When should I start? Right? Ask for the sale, whether you're in sales or not. Give them an opportunity to tell you. And then the second thing is follow up. And I'm going to tell you right now, don't just follow up with an email. Because guess what? Everybody can follow up with an email. Differentiate yourself, right? Write a handwritten note. Make a phone call a week later, right? Do little things that go a long way from that perspective. But those are the big things I would always look for in an interview is just, can you tell your story? And if you're thinking to yourself right now and you're sitting there thinking like, you know what? I don't know how I'd answer that question, or I really haven't shown a failure. Like, start prepping that. You know, we're not even going to be able to have time to get into it, but like, you think about Chat GPT, like that's a perfect tool. Like, God, if Chat GPT was around and I was in college, I would have been flunked out. I would have plagiarized everything, right? Like literally going like, what questions should I ask during this interview? Or if I'm asked in an interview how I overcame a struggle or a disappointment in my life, how should I answer it? And just practice it. Prep yourself. Call your friends, call your family, prep for an interview. That goes a long way.
No, those are all really, really good nuggets, man. There's a question here I want to see if we could touch base on real quickly. This is someone, Pranav, I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced, ask, how would you recommend someone take their first job if they find it, if they should they take that first job in their desired sport or team, even if it's not exactly what they want, or should they wait for the right position to come along and risk it?
Gain experience is my biggest thing. You know, I think one of the things that separated me early on in my career and in my career in general is I was open to relocating. Now, look, I'm not going to sit here and tell you because some of you may have personal reasons that you need to stay somewhere. But be willing to relocate. You can always move back. That's a big differentiator. When it comes to the role, like I'm always a big believer, people lead. Everything else follows. Money, title, responsibility. Those will follow as long as you surround yourself with the right people. And so as you think about that first role, you think about that next role. Don't be because you're the biggest fan of that team or that sport. My first job, I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and I started working for the Atlanta Hawks, which is the NBA, and the Atlanta Thrashers, which they're not even there anymore, but there was an NHL team. I had never been to an NHL game. I didn't know anything about the NHL. I'll be dead honest. Like on my drive down to Atlanta, getting ready for that interview, I was trying to like study the sport of hockey. I never played the sport. I didn't know anything about it. I certainly couldn't pronounce any of the players' names, didn't know any of the players, right? Outside of the big ones and Wayne Gretzky's of the world. And I was nervous. And then I quickly realized like, hey, I don't need to know about hockey. I need to know about the business and the value proposition that somebody would want to buy hockey. And so I wouldn't get caught up in the sport. I wouldn't get caught up in the team. I wouldn't get caught up in the city. Go to an opportunity that has the right people and the right learning experience. You know, because then that's how you'll better yourself. No different than right now. Like if you're still debating, I want to be in analytics, I want to be in data, I want to be in finance, I want to be in sales, I want to be in marketing, whatever. Go try to job shadow, get internships to gain that real life experience to truly figure out which way do you want to take and where do you want to go from here.
Yeah, let me ask another question someone had here. This is from Nick, and this is related to and you, Travis. I think we probably have had a lot of people we've talked with over the years, and you see different pathways to get to different roles. And someone who's asking, you know, as a senior graduating in May, they're considering whether to pursue a master's degree right now coming up. You know, could you talk a little about what the value of pursuing a master's degree now over or over entering the actual workforce right as an undergrad?
Yeah. It's a great question. And it's a question that I ask often on 52 Weeks of Hustle with some of our industry C-level executives. I personally did not. I still don't have a further education. I joke at times I barely have an undergrad. What I would tell all of you, find out what you're passionate about. Like, look, I go back when I was done graduating, I graduated in 4 years. I could not fathom the idea of going back to school. Like it just didn't make sense for me. And I wanted to make money. I had a lot of loans. I had a lot of debt. Like I need to find a way to get a job. And then post that, I will tell you, anytime you can further educate yourself, you're going to be better off. And that can be from going back to school, whether it be right away or in the future. That can be reading, that can be gaining mentorship, that can be gaining just real life experience. And so I don't have a strong position one way or another. I will tell you, in the sports industry, look, I'm not gonna shy away. I'm greedy. I'm motivated by money. By going back and getting your master's in most areas in the sports field, you're not going to get paid more. Like where, I have family and friends that are in education. You go back and get your master's. With a master's, you'll get a little bit higher bump. Like when it comes and it says, hey, this entry-level job pays you $45,000, you would get paid $45,000 if you came out of undergrad, if you had your PhD, if you had experience for 15 years in the industry. So don't make that decision based on finances, because you're working in the sports field. It's not going to change. But, my best advice to that is, where your passions lie, what you want to get out of it. I've seen way too many people go back to school because they don't know what the hell they're going to do. Where I would challenge them is like, get more internships while you're in undergrad, or job shadow and figure out what you want to do. Because then if that path leads you to go back to school, great. If it doesn't, then you're gonna have to figure that out. But anytime you can further educate yourself, anytime you can get better, picking the brains of others, listen to podcasts, reading books, reading articles, you've always got to be learning. And this business, this marketplace, this environment moves so damn quick at times that if you're not evolving, you're screwed. And I kind of joke about like social media. My friends used to always make fun of me. Like I was Twitterless Trav and Facebookless Trav. Like, and I was their Facebookless friend because I never had social media. And I still say I don't have a ton, but I utilize LinkedIn. I utilize Instagram from a business purpose. I don't have personal social media, but I've had to evolve or people would pass me.
Travis, let me ask you a question. I see it in the industry, and I know you notice it as well, related to like more sports sales programs as far as entry level for folks to get started with different teams. Can you talk a little bit about like the value of that opportunity and what it? I know, at MLB we actually have our own program that we've tried to create to help get more diversity within the sports industry, especially within sports sales, what's called MLB on Deck. But I was just curious from your thoughts and what you've seen, and how these ways to break in the door, come in somewhere, especially if you want to, hopefully if you want to get into sales, but kind of talk a little bit about how these programs have really developed and what you've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, right? Like everybody's always selling, whether they're in sales or not. And we just talked about like whether it be networking, a job interview. If you can't sell yourself, you're not going to be able to sell anything. Even if you want to get into HR, analytics, like if you can't sell yourself on an interview, you're not going to be doing it. But, I look at like there's a lot of entry-level programs. And here's the advice I always give to everybody, because I think many times and often people are like, oh, let me, and I know college professors are openly saying it, and I hate it. I'm going to be transparent. Like, just get your foot in the door. I've been in this business. When have I been in this business? 16 years. There are very few people, probably less than a handful, that I can say started out in like an entry-level sales and moved to a different kind of department, right? Move to marketing, move to head of PR, because guess what? The head of PR, the head of marketing are going to look for people that gain entry-level experience in those fields. There's not a ton that goes into it. And if you think about it, like, and again, I've been in the revenue end. I don't want to hire somebody that put a lot of time, money, resources, budget, and effort in, that in 6 months there's bounce on me after I train them and educate them up. So where my advice to everybody is, don't just go in and get your foot in the door. Where my advice is, go out and gain as much experience as you can so you know which door to open. Because I guarantee you right now, if you go into that interview and you're like, well, why sales? Because people ask, or why this? Oh, I just, that's where I just want to get my foot in the door. My long-term goal is getting to marketing. Most hiring managers are going to say, and you should apply for this entry-level marketing role or go work for that. And so, I think that's how the programs have continued to evolve, is they want to help, they want to build, but I think it comes down to like that candidate. Like, are you as a candidate willing to truly push the envelope of what you want to do full time? And I'm not saying you have to know right now what you're going to do in 15 years. Hell, I don't know what I'm going to do in 15 years. And I can guarantee when I first started in this business, I didn't know. Like, probably 7 years ago, 5 years ago, I would be like, I would never not work for a team or league. But now I'm like that vendor, but I'm in the
Yeah.
sports entertainment space, and like, because things have evolved and where my passions are lying.
Travis, what have you seen, especially with the data now that's being generated and teams are and leagues are capturing so much? How has this been has it been a game changer for even the sales industry as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, I look at Logitix right now, the company I work for, like we are big in data. We see about $4 billion worth of transactions in live event entertainment go through our pipes every year. So the data we have access to the buyers, to the personas, to the profiles, to the opportunities, to what they're willing to spend on tickets and pricing. And, no different, like you see in data and analytics on the sports team side, it used to be like maybe a 1.5 person department. Right before this call, I was just on a call with an NBA team that up until 2 years ago had 2 people on their analytics team. They're now at 12 people,
Wow.
one NBA franchise. And so because they see the value of, one, understanding who your fan is, understanding what buying prowess is, right? At the end of the day, any sports team, it's all about eyeballs from a sponsorship end and cheeks and seats from a ticketing end. Like how much revenue and how many people are coming to those games. And the data is a big part of it, to breaking down what leads they should target, to what time they should send an email pitching, opportunity to whoever it is, right? To a single game buyer, to a group buyer, to understand the pricing, to understand why people buy, when people buy. The data and analytics behind it is so big. I mean, even to a hiring of personnel. I've had our data analytics team build out kind of personas of employees and say, okay, of this employee that does this or has had this, like how likely are they to be successful? Right? Somewhat of a personality test. Like you hear about that, like the NFL combines when they have personality tests and, the personality index and like, things like that. Like those are the type of things that data and analytics 10 years ago, you would have never thought about, but now it's a big piece of it.
Yeah, it's funny. When I look back and even my own background years ago, when I was in college, I actually worked a sales job, customer service. I worked at a Sears Auto Center, whereas I was selling tires and batteries and other services. And I will truly say that experience, I did that for 3+ years during my college years. And it truly helped me as far as being able to interact with people, being able to read people, and also just being able to deal with conflict resolution first and foremost, because as we
Yep.
all know, cars are very sensitive topics for people. So especially when there's an issue with it, and uh, I truly saw that value of it, of how that whole experience. One, it felt like it opened me up as a person,
Yep.
and then I kind of got out of my own little shell. It's something that was just pretty amazing.
Everything you do is a learning experience. I did the same thing in college. I went door to door selling kitchens, windows, and gutter caps. I had zero passion for it, but I found out that I had a passion for sales. And so I had to figure out through that, I don't want to sell kitchens and windows. I want to sell sports because that's what I'm passionate about. So absolutely. Experience
Yeah.
goes a long way.
We had a question that was here in the chat related to like making a career change. And Travis, just curious what your thoughts are from folks that the question we had was from Ramon, who was talking about he's coming from a physics background and he's looking to switch into more of an analytics type of area. But I'm just curious what your thoughts are just in terms of folks you've had to deal with who are making career changes and trying to help guide them and assist them.
I look, growing up and still to this day, anytime I talk to my uncle, he's a general sales manager at a car dealership, Northwest Ohio, makes a good living, feels like a good job. But ever since I can remember, how's it going, Uncle Tim? Counting down to the days till I retire. And I'm thinking to myself, why would you do that? Why would you put yourself through that? Like most people on a minimum are probably working 35 to 40 years of their life in a full-time capacity. Why would you ever want to look in the mirror and be like miserable waking up? And so first end on a career change, go out and figure out, like, if you're in a role or in something that you're just not happy about or not excited about, go do something different. Right? Like why keep, what's the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Why all of a sudden would you expect a different result from going in the same job that you're miserable at? So career change, like, yeah, now you're going to have and need a reason why, right? It can't be because like, yeah, like it's just not fun anymore. Like, you gotta have a reason, like, okay, maybe your past career isn't fun, but now you're going into this role. Why? Why are you intrigued by this role? Why are you going to have a passion for this role? Why are you going to have a work ethic for this role? Why are you going to be open to coaching for this role? Why are you going to be the best candidate regardless of your past experience? I think you got to look at it that way. Again, it goes back to, like, what is your elevator pitch? How are you selling yourself? So,
Yeah.
but I'm all for it. I'm all for career changes. I mean, I think it's crazy that people that think that, oh, I'm going to do this for the next 40 years of my life. There's so many things that can happen both personally and professionally that would impact that mindset and that thinking. But there's always, what I want to challenge everyone, and I want everyone to write this down, and we don't have time to do it now, but I want you to think about your why. Why are you here tonight? Why do you want to get into this business? Why do you want to have a career in sports? Like, think about your why, right? And my why was, just really quick, I was raised by my grandparents. They didn't have any money. They worked in a factory. Neither of them even graduated high school. Worked in a factory and worked in construction. So I didn't have a ton of money, didn't grow up. And I remember my first job getting to Atlanta. My grandpa had already passed away. My grandma came down and spent a month with me. And I took her to a really nice steakhouse. And I had never been to one. My nice steak I ever eaten was Applebee's. And like, that was because I made the honor roll, right? And it was this nice steakhouse. And it was like her favorite meal. And now I have a little daughter that's turning 1 on Saturday. And, that's my why. Like, everything I do is I want to impress my grandparents who, are no longer with us, but I want to impress my daughter. I want to show her a good life. And so I want all of you to do that exercise of, like, what's your why? And then print it out, put it on your computer, put it at your desk, and just think every day, why are you going to push yourself? Don't be content being good or great. Push yourself to be elite. Think about your why every single day.
Oh, that's a very important question, which I hope everyone will take advantage of. I've got a question from Jonathan that's in here. He's talking about advice for networking on LinkedIn. What's the best way to approach individuals, and how do you make yourself stand out to truly get a response? Kind of curious what your thoughts, Travis.
Yeah. So, look, I'll look at, again, going back to my phone, Parker, you added me right now. Hey, Travis, it was great to hear you speak on the SABR Scholars, right? Transparently, there's someone else. I'm not going to name your name. It's just one of the generic messages is inviting you to connect, right? That doesn't separate yourself, right? Parker, where he's showing an emphasis, showing like, hey, there's a value there. So I think as you think about, like, on LinkedIn, it's so easy to find something about them. Like, whether you know of a place they worked, whether you know their college, whether you saw that they're a group or a hobby that you're also interested in, find ways to reach out with a personal effect and a personal touch point. And again, going back to everything is about the why. Why did you choose them to reach out? There are so many people that'll reach out to me with the generic reach out. And honestly, a lot of them sit in my inbox for a while, right? Because it's like, who is this person? I don't know this person. Selfishly, are they going to provide any value to me? Is there any opportunity there? And so as you think about networking on LinkedIn, like, if you're reaching out to that person, tell them why. And don't be afraid to tell them why. If you're reaching out because you want to, like, connect with them because you saw there's an open role, be honest with them. And tell them, and kind of shoot them right between the eyes of, like, here's why you're reaching out. Like, you're going to be the aggressor. No different when you're an in-person networking event, you're going to be the aggressor going out and, like, getting out of your comfort zone and talking to people, because that's what makes sense.
It's funny when I think about with LinkedIn, and obviously LinkedIn has been a great resource for me and I think for many others. For those that are interested in getting into baseball, sort of little self promo, but definitely check out the Baseball Industry Network, a group I created on LinkedIn.
Yep.
We have a membership of over 45,000 individuals, so just a great way to connect with other baseball people. It's also been a great way for folks to start the way to make their way in the industry. And my whole goal, even with just creating the group itself, was just to help folks to get one step closer to make their way into the industry.
I have a funny story about networking. So every year baseball hosts winter meetings. Okay. So this is, several years ago, the winter meetings were in San Diego, and I was sitting at a table, with a couple people that I had known through the industry. And this girl came up and she said, "Hey, I am so-and-so. I work at a minor league baseball team. And I'm just looking here to network." Fast forward, she's now my wife and mother of my child. But in general, like, and I always tell her, and I'm very proud of her. And now she works for an NFL franchise, but she worked in minor league baseball for 8 years. And it's like, there are so many people at these winter meetings that didn't come up and say anything. And she went out of her way by herself. And I always kind of joke, I wish it was because like she was actually into me. That had nothing to do about it. She was just bouncing around the table. I mean, we didn't start dating for 3 years after that, but it was one of those things, like that's how we first met. And it was all about, she wanted to network and she wanted to gain, a bigger network from that perspective. And so I'm not sitting here saying, don't come after me if you're like, "Hey, I went to network and I haven't found a significant other." Like that was just randomly happening. But I applaud her because she went out of her way, and I feel like I had to still shoot my shot a lot more to get her. But, as in a personal relationship, but from a professional end, like those are the type of people that are going to make it in life, like, and make it in this business. They're willing to go out of your comfort zone. Like you think about it, there was, 4 random people just sitting around talking, and people are coming up to like interact. And I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, I mean, definitely with just the people that you get a chance to connect with. It's funny. Everybody just has their own story, which is so important. And obviously, where you make those connections with people, and then obviously it could lead to something. I do have a question, Travis. This will be our last question for tonight. Just related to it's in the chat related to minor league sports. When it comes to the minor leagues versus the big leagues. When it comes to different sports and different industries within sports itself. Any thoughts on what you've kind of seen, or with somebody that may be considering the opportunity to work on the minor league side within one of the major sports, how that can still lead to hopefully a great pathway for that person?
Amazing experience. Look, I never worked full time in minor league sports, but probably the best role that got me into like professional sports was when I was in college. I interned at a racetrack, where I started out as a PA announcer and writing press releases, and then got into selling, trackside banners and doing a little bit of everything else for a small track, because you were doing everything. Like it was, when the rain delay, just driving golf carts around the track to try to dry it up, to, pulling, tarp over the kind of the tire platform. No different like minor league baseball, right? You're pulling tarp one day, you're the mascot one day, you're selling sponsorship, you're a community event, and everywhere in between. Like the people that I have hired from minor league sports are always ones that I just know are going to have a work ethic, right? Because they've got to do a little bit of everything. They're probably some of the most well-rounded people I've ever been around. So I think, again, it goes back to like, take a role for the right people and the right opportunity. Don't take a role because it's your favorite sport, a favorite team, or a professional. Like there's some roles that you're just going to be better off if you start in the minor leagues, because you're going to gain real life hands-on experience. Like I look at it, here's a prime example, even how I, helped really, I guess evolve in my career. I was the VP of sales, for an NBA team. I didn't have a much chance to like price tickets or market, because there's so much money at stake. We had our own dedicated marketing team, our own dedicated pricing team. But on that, we also had a WNBA team and an arena football and an NBA G League team. There wasn't a ton of resources to go to that. So I was pricing all of that. I was marketing all that. I was putting all the digital assets. It was probably the best learning experience. So I think about it as like, wow, it was really cool to be a VP of an NBA team. But like really where I gained most of my experience in being well-rounded is all the other little things for the minor league sports of it, because there wasn't a ton of resources. So you can get kind of your hands wet with a little bit of more things. And so I think that went a long way.
No, thank you for that. And again, Travis, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here. It's been incredible to get a chance to connect with you. And I think you shared so many great nuggets with this group and this audience. So really, really thank you again for being a part of this.
No, thanks, Tyrone. And, thanks, Scott, and in the entire crew and everybody. Again, as I started off, thank you for being here. This is already differentiating yourself, right? I appreciate it. I appreciate everyone's time. Please, I mean this wholeheartedly. Like, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll give you my email real quick and my cell phone number. My email is tapple@logitix.com. LOGITIX.com. Feel free to reach out to me. Please add me on LinkedIn. My cell phone number, 305-619-5171. I say that like I'm here to help. I love giving back. I love helping people. So feel free to reach out. I say this like on a subtle plug, like, and it's not like I get paid a ton of money for it, but like, feel free to reach out about, read the book, like Hustle Your Way to Success in Sports Sales, listen to the podcast, 52 Weeks of Hustle, but more importantly, do everything to further your education. There are so many books out there. There's so many podcasts out there. There's so many articles out there. Do everything you can to better yourself, like push yourself. Do not be content being good or great. Push yourself to be elite. But again, thank you everyone for your time. Certainly appreciate it. Best of luck at the upcoming conference. And please stay in touch. If there's anything I can ever do, please let me know.
Thanks, Travis. Let's appreciate it. Everyone, thank you. Let's turn it over to Scott.
Thank you.
You guys, that was awesome. And I didn't, this is selfish of me. I worked in minor league baseball for close to 15 years, so I didn't plant that question, but I do agree with you, Travis, that minor league baseball, our minor league sports employees are some of the most well-rounded, hardworking folks.
Yes,
that you're
absolutely.
Gonna find. I would like to just to piggyback on what these guys said about baseball and sports in general being an incredibly small world. You never know who you're going to meet, whether it's at a conference or a job fair or just coming across somebody you work for a team. You're going to meet people that you will cross paths with 5-10 years down the line. So don't burn bridges. Work on building your networks. Because the goal is 10-15 years from now, you're not needing a resume to sell yourself. It's the connections and the relationships that you've made along the way that can speak for your work and for your skills. So really appreciate Travis bringing some different insights to this group. The last thing we're going to do before we get everybody out of here is I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Jessica Smith. She's going to talk a little bit about the analytics conference coming up, and then we'll get everybody out of here. But appreciate both of you. And I'll turn it over to Jessica.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for attending. It was a really great session tonight. Just before you leave, wanted to highlight the upcoming analytics conference that we have that will be in downtown Phoenix. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So it's taking place March 8th through 10th, again, on the downtown ASU Phoenix campus, but we will have a virtual registration opportunity as well for our student members. So with your SABR membership discount, it will be $150 in person or $50 for the virtual registration link. Thursday, we'll have a student-only virtual session opportunity that will be really similar to what we did tonight. We'll have some really great guest speakers in the industry. You'll have the opportunity to ask them questions. And then we'll also do some breakout sessions with your fellow student SABR members. So you'll get to network and make more connections and put the advice that you learned tonight to work. So if you would like to attend virtually, you can email myself or Scott Carter to get the registration link for that. Also, following the conference, you'll be emailed a complimentary code for a Rapsodo certification course, as well as job postings from some of our industry partners who will be at the event as well. So if you're not already registered, we highly recommend that you go ahead and take advantage of the opportunity. And again, if you have any questions about that, feel free to let myself or Scott Carter know, and we are happy to help. That's all I got.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jess. Thanks, Tyrone. Thank you, Travis. If any of you have any questions whatsoever, hopefully you know by now, feel free to reach out to anybody on the SABR staff. We're happy to answer your questions. Hopefully we see many of you at the analytics conference here coming up the first week of March. Keep in touch. Stay safe out there. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody.